everyone. Thank you for joining Greenovate Boston for our lunchtime webinar with the Trust for Public Land and the Climate Smart Cities Boston tool. We're just getting started here, and thanks for joining us as we get the webinar set up. You'll see that we have in the chat area a link to a form for you to submit questions. We'll be checking this throughout the webinar, so if you have questions throughout this, you can submit them via that form if you do not want to create a YouTube channel. I don't think I mentioned this, but this is Jessica Feldish of Greenovate Boston. I'm the program manager, and I'm here with the Trust for Public Land, and we're really excited to be able to share this opportunity to teach people in Boston how we can use this tool. It's really great for us to be able to look at all of the different kinds of vulnerabilities in Boston due to climate change impacts, such as heat, flooding, and other things that will be happening as our climate changes, and then see how those all relate to other social vulnerabilities and transportation issues. This is all on a Google Maps-like platform where you'll be able to see how you can use this for different opportunities of climate action and green infrastructure. We're excited also that the Trust for Public Land is working with our regional Greater Boston metro area to do similar risk to see how this can be used across municipal boundaries. I'm now going to turn it over to the Trust for Public Land, as this is their tool, and they've worked really, really hard to be able to create this resources for people to use in the city of Boston and, like I mentioned, soon across the region. So we're very lucky and happy to have them here and share this opportunity with you all.
Thanks, Jessica. We really appreciate you and your team providing us with this opportunity to share our work with the Greenovate community. I'm here today. My name's Chris.David. I'm the Climate JS Program Manager for the Trust for Public Land, working on Climate Smart Cities projects across the country. I'm here today with Lita Aljabar, who's our Program Coordinator for Climate Smart Cities, and our Urban Program Director for Massachusetts and Rhode Island, Darcy Schofield. We're hoping today that you'll be able to take something from this presentation that helps you do your job more efficiently, sparks ideas for collaboration with other agencies, and helps you to think about ways you can weave green infrastructure into your projects and properties. For those of you that are unfamiliar with our work, the Trust for Public Land is a national organization with a mission to create parks and protect land for people, ensuring healthy, livable communities for generations to come. In urban areas, our goal is to make sure everyone is within a 10-minute walk of a park or green space. Many of you may be familiar with our Park Score initiative, which ranks the 100 largest city park systems by access, investment, and amenities. I believe the city of Boston ranks 13th on that list. Not bad, but there's still work to do. TBL's Climate Smart Cities program, led by my colleague Holly Bostrom, tackles incorporating green space into cities from another angle. We support cities in their efforts to become more climate resilient in the face of the uncertainty of climate change. We're doing this work in about 20 cities across the country, from Boston to New York to Cleveland, New Orleans, Los Angeles, and many places in between. We're going to start today with a brief overview of our program, discuss our partnership with the City of Boston, and go over available resources before we dig into the decision support tool that you're all here to view today. To get it off, I'm going to play a very short, minute-and-a-half video describing the framework of our program.
Population now lives in cities, and those cities are increasingly at risk due to climate change. Rising sea levels, flooding, and intensifying heat waves are serious threats to city living. But there is something we can do. Bringing nature back into cities lowers carbon emissions and helps keep cities safe from major storm events. And that's what the Trust for Public Land does with its approach to climate-smart cities. We weave nature and natural functions into the built environment by focusing on 4 key aspects of greening. We connect neighborhoods around the city with bike-walk corridors that strengthen communities and lessen pollution from cars. We cool urban air with shade trees and new parks, which minimizes the effects of heat waves and reduces indoor temperatures by as much as 10 degrees. We absorb stormwater runoff and recharge drinking water supplies by building water-smart parks, playgrounds, and green alleys. And we help protect at-risk cities that are vulnerable to climate-driven devastation like hurricanes and flooding by establishing waterfront parks, wetlands, and healthy shorelines. We pinpoint areas of threat and help deliver cutting-edge projects by partnering with city governments and top research universities, bringing our strategy to life. The Trust for Public Land isn't just building parks and protecting land. We're helping create climate-smart cities for generations to come. Visit the Trust for Public Land at tpl.org/services to learn more.
So the one other thing I'll add here to what you learned in the video is that equity really is a key driver of our work, supporting historically underserved and disadvantaged populations that are disproportionately impacted by exposures related to connect, cool, absorb, and protect is a central value of our program. I'll get into how we apply this when we start digging into the tool. You should now see on your screen the Climate Smart Boston landing page. This is the home base for your journey into Climate Smart Boston, and where you'll be able to find all of the resources for this program, including our mapping portal or decision support tool, a really, really exciting story map. I'm just going to highlight that very quickly here. That we built with help from Boston Harbor Now that includes perspectives on climate change from residents around the city. You'll also find detailed descriptions of our analysis, PDF maps, and support for using our tools. Another resource that is not currently on the tool here, included on the landing page, but will be very shortly, is a report Tufts University wrote for us that details how green infrastructure can help to mitigate the urban heat island in Boston, and along with the development of a heat vulnerability index that we think could be particularly valuable to our partners in and around the city. We'll regularly be updating this site with new information and resources as we reach new milestones implementing climate smart solutions in Boston. Now to the tool. So in Boston, the local driver of our analysis is the fantastic forward-thinking Climate Ready Boston initiative. Our role has been to help identify project locations that support resilient strategies, the resilient strategies identified in that report. We also utilize goals and initiatives from other fantastic planning work that's being done across the city, from Imagine Boston to Go Boston 2030, among others, to identify climate smart priorities. Each climate priority was guided by our technical advisory team, which is comprised of 30 plus members doing climate-related work across multiple city departments, local nonprofits, and state agencies. So this is our login page. Anyone can use this tool. We only ask that when you come to this login page for the first time, you create a new account through this link here and log into the tool. Okay, and we're back. What is this tool? The overarching goal is to identify priority areas for multiple benefit green infrastructure interventions with a focus on those people and places at the greatest risk to the effects of climate change. Our tool is best at helping users identify where climate intervention is needed. and provides a variety of ways to help explain why. So I'm opening the tool now. There's a short description and overview about the tool here, and what Connect, Cool, Absorb, and Protect are, and some of the different ways you can explore the tool. Okay. So you should be able to see on your screen now. I'm going to try to make it just a little bit wider here. I think we have a little bit of space. There we go. And zoom out a little bit. So you should be able to see the tool on your screen now. It may look familiar to some of you. We have all of our tools and data on the left-hand side over here. We have a map that you can interact with in the same way that you might interact with Google Maps. We have help information and the ability to search for addresses, and we'll go over some of that along the way. We have base maps. You can look at satellite imagery from there. We're going to start with a normal topo base map. As I mentioned, we work with as partners with our technical advisory team throughout the 15-month process, from kickoff to tool completion to in order to identify criteria and model priorities across all of our Climate Smart Cities objectives to tell the story of climate in the city of Boston. I'm going to start just quickly reviewing data. We have two types of data in our tool. Overlay information, which you see here on the left on the top, provides important contextual information about the city of Boston. So you'll see the familiar Connect, Cool, Absorb, and Protect, as well as critical infrastructure, those places that are at risk, and social vulnerability, thinking about equity. You also see green infrastructure suitability. So all of this data provides some context. Some of it is base information that we use in the development of our priorities, our analysis results that you'll see down below, and some of them you'll see, and some of them provide that information, like green infrastructure suitability, that helps you start to answer the question, what is appropriate on this site? As I mentioned, what our tool does is help you identify where there are priorities. What the green infrastructure suitability starts to do with things like slope, identifying what trees are around, what the tree canopy cover is in the area, things like that, helps you start to understand what you might want to do on a specific site. We don't get into what that is, but we try to provide you that information that you might need in order to make those kinds of decisions. We also have analysis results. So our analysis results are what we work on with our advisory team to identify what the priorities are across the city. So I'm just going to click on our urban heat island analysis very quickly. What you see here is a beige to red color scheme from moderate to high that identifies where the urban heat island identifies there are priorities within the city of Boston. So you see Alston-Brighton is very much a hot spot, a lot in the center of Boston going down into Dorchester, and other places around the city, including Charlestown. So we do this analysis for all of the criteria, so you'll see some version of that moderate to high scale across all of our analyses. I'm just clicking on our nighttime here. And then we have our stacked priorities. So for cool, so for that urban heat island objective, we combine our individual criteria. So in the case of cool, we only had 2 criteria. We work with our advisory team to weight those in order of importance and combine them into a stacked priority for cool. We do this for each of our objectives. I'm just going to click through our Connect analysis very quickly as well. And then, as I mentioned, for each one, we provide that stacked priority for Connect. Once we've done that for each of our objectives, we do the same thing for our overall stacked priorities. So we combine the stacked results for Cool, Connect, Absorb, Protect, critical infrastructure, and social vulnerability into what I like to describe as a generalized priority or need result for multiple benefit green infrastructure in the city. That starts to get you that sort of generalized view, but we can go a step deeper. which leads to how we're going to spend the rest of our time here today. We like to really demonstrate this tool through decision-making scenarios that illustrate the functions of the tool. So I'm going to go through a couple of hypothetical scenarios that we hope to at least be true someday, that might help to spark interest or give you some ideas for how you might want to use this tool in your work. So I'm going to start with data exploration. So exploring neighborhood context. I'm going to turn our results off here for a moment. So I'm just going to give you a quick example. As I mentioned, these are hypothetical situations. So the Boston Transportation Department might want to do a complete streets project that supports Go Boston 2030 and provides multiple benefits to mitigate heat and potentially also manage some stormwater through green infrastructure. How can we use the tool to make the case for priority neighborhoods for this work? So I'm going to go down to our scenario tool. So what this tool does is allow you to create your own stacked priorities depending on what your interest or goal or initiative is. So what we heard from the Transportation Department, again, hypothetically, is that they want to do a complete streets project, so they're very focused on active transportation and connect. They want to help to mitigate urban heat. It's a lower priority, but they're interested in thinking about ways that they can mitigate for stormwater, and they're very much focused on vulnerable populations. So I'm going as I was talking, I was setting the weights based on what we heard from Boston Transportation Department, and now I'm going to run the analysis. So it's going to take just a moment to run, and what it's going to do is create a new layer that is a customized version of this overall stack priorities that I showed you earlier that looks like this. So it'll just take another couple seconds to finish up, and then it'll pop up on the screen. What we'll do from there is zoom into an area that shows up as a priority. It'll show up with that beige to red on that beige to red scale. So what you see here now is that priority result. So I'm going to zoom into a neighborhood here. And in fact, we have some ability to interact with the way the results look. I'm going to make this a little bit lighter so we can see a little bit more of the underlying base map. I'm zooming in here, and what I'm zooming into, ironically enough, the Columbia Road area, sort of dissecting sort of in between Roxbury and Dorchester. It looks like this area in general is very much a priority for something like complete streets based on our scenario weighting results. So let's dig in a little bit deeper. Let's see what other features are around that area. For example, let's look at what the major transportation stops are, if there's anything around there. There's a couple, but it's pretty sparse between T-stops and commuter rail. Boston is a very well resource city for transportation via bus, and there's lots of bus opportunities there too. But looking at where there are existing bike pathways, there are a few again, but there's opportunity for more and to create new connections. So I'm going to just stick with this result right here. Actually, one other thing, now that I think of it, I'm going to add here is just to look at what the tree canopy cover is in the area. You can see it's pretty sparse. I'm going to make it a little bit less transparent here so we can see the tree canopy cover a little bit better. So that looks, it looks like urban heat also might be a priority here. So I'm gonna just take a stab here at drawing a potential line around, not this one, along this corridor. So let's see if we can get this going here. All right. The draw function appears to be Oh, there we go. It just took me a minute. So I'm just drawing a potential line across a potential corridor that we might want to do complete streets. So what you can do from here is go down to the print tool here and create your custom map. So I'm going to create a custom map. I'm going to give it a custom title. I'm going to call it Columbia Road Complete Streets Opportunity. And then I'm going to print that map. So it just takes a couple seconds, and it'll print everything on a custom map that we have turned on in the tool. So I'm just going to pop that open real quick. And there's our custom map for Columbia Road Complete Streets Opportunities. That includes a legend for everything that we have turned on in that map. So that's the first scenario and set of functions that I was interested in showing you today. That print map tool shows you that you can draw on a map. You also can use Google Street View to look at context within, if you're interested in a specific site. So if you click on the Google Street View, it'll bring you into a spot on the map that you might want to explore at start. But I think these are functions that you see in a lot of different tools. I think where our tool is set apart is where we tag all of these results, all of the analysis that we've done down to the parcel level. And I want to go through in the next couple of scenarios examples of how you might use it for that purpose. I'm just going to refresh a little bit, just to turn off all of the layers that I had turned on for that neighborhood context scenario. So let's go to another one. So BPDA and the Environment Department are reviewing green infrastructure projects for their benefit to critical infrastructure in areas with a high risk of coastal flooding. So that's an example of reviewing a project proposal. If you had put out an RFP, you could also think of it from the other side. If you're a developer or someone that wants to do a green infrastructure related project, you can use this function to make the case for your site for doing green infrastructure on it. So one of the places where one of the proposals that came in was for 146 London Street in Boston. So that's in East Boston. So we're going to zoom in here. And it's zoomed into that address. I'm selecting that parcel here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see everything. So what I did when I selected that parcel, what it did is brought up an identify window that has all of the information that we've tagged to that parcel. The base owner information, the number of acres, all of the criteria that we've tagged to that parcel. So as I mentioned, all of our analysis results we've tagged over here, that we've tagged to that parcel, to all of the parcels in the city, and all of the green infrastructure information that we have is also tagged to that parcel. So you can scroll through, there's a lot there. But you can also create a parcel report. So I'm just going to click that create parcel report button, and it's going to create another custom report as a PDF for that specific parcel with an overview map, and all of the information that we've tagged to that parcel. So the minimum slope for green infrastructure suitability, the minimum elevation, whether there are existing wetlands or not on that site, whether it's vacant or not. In this case, it is vacant. All of the stacked priorities that we have on that site, both in the number of acres as well as the percentage of that parcel that falls within those priority areas. There's an overview map. And as I mentioned, for each of our criteria, each of our objectives and each of our criteria, all of the information that we've tagged to that parcel. So you can save these, print these, bring them to meetings, catalog parcels that that are of interest that you've gotten in for review, and then use these reports to compare them. So that's the second scenario that I wanted to go over, sort of thinking about how you can use this for project review, for analysis of parcels or sites that you are interested in. So the next and the final decision-making scenario I wanted to go over today is the site selection. I think it's really, truly where the power of our tool is. And that's in our querying functionality. So as I mentioned, everything is tagged to parcels. I like to say that a lot because I think it's really important. So what this allows you to do is to identify parcels within a universe that meet your specific criteria for your project, your goal, your interest. So I'm going to provide another scenario. Bear with me here again. The Boston Water and Sewer Commission wants to target areas of high stormwater runoff to do a relatively large green infrastructure project that also provides new park access to those in the city that might not already have it. But they also know, for example, that the Public Health Commission is really interested in heat islands and the impacts that those heat islands have on low-income communities. Could we build a multiple benefit green infrastructure project based on both agencies' goals? So what did we hear? We heard that the Boston Water and Sewer Commission wanted to identify areas with high amounts of stormwater runoff. So we're going to look at our estimated runoff potential result. And just to give you a little context here, I'm going to turn on the priority result for a moment on what that looks like. So what that's doing is, what we're doing here is we're taking a normal storm event, like a 1-inch storm, for example, and identifying based on land use and soil type what the potential runoff might be due to that site in that area. So I'm going to add that estimated runoff potential as a condition to our query. So I just select it and click that Add Condition button. We also heard that Public Health is really, the Public Health Commission is really interested in urban heat. So I'm going to add the cool priorities. Oh, sorry, I didn't select it. There we go. And I'm going to add that as a condition. So I'll just give you a little more context there. The cool priorities here show the combined result for daytime and nighttime urban heat islands. Turn that back off. We also heard low-end, they're interested in vulnerable populations to heat. So we know that low-income households are more vulnerable to the impacts of extreme heat than others. So we're going to add that as a condition as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and, we also heard about new park access in conjunction with the Parks Department. So I'm going to go ahead and, this is probably the longest criteria name that we have. It's called Promote an Active and Healthy Lifestyle by Providing Access to Green Space. It's basically identifying areas that are in need of new green space or parks. I'm going to add that as a condition. So I'm going to go ahead and run that query. So what that's doing, it's searching all 200,000 plus parcels in the city of Boston and identifying all of the parcels that overlap with those 4 priority areas that I've identified. So if you can see at the bottom of your screen, it brought back over 2,500 parcels. This is the perfect opportunity for your intern to go through all 2,500 parcels to let you know which ones are the most important. I'm going to pause there to let that sink in a little bit. Okay, that was joking. I probably need some new material, but what's really great about our tool is that we can keep those initial conditions and then refine that criteria. So let's look for potentially low-hanging fruit, so parcels that already are vacant. So I'm going to look at any parcel that has been identified as a vacant lot through the assessor's office. I'm going to rerun that query now. So now it's, again, refining that, we're down to 287. Let's do one more, because we also heard the term relatively large, and relatively large is, means different things to different people, but we're going to go with over 2 acres. So that is a pretty large parcel, especially in a city like Boston. So I'm going to add 2 acres, anything greater than 2 acres. So now what it's doing, it's looking for our 4 priority analyses, our 4 priority conditions. It's looking for vacant lots, and it's looking for lots that are greater than 2 acres. I'm going to run that query now. So we're down to 5 parcels. So now our opportunity here is to scroll through and see what parcels have been highlighted. So you can select, you just click on one of the parcels and it'll zoom in. This is quite a strange parcel in the city of Boston. It looks like it crosses roads within neighborhoods, but it's something to at least explore. We could zoom into this one. We can look at the satellite information to see what's going on there, or we can move to the next one. So in Alston, we know this spot, sort of right near the I-90 interchange. Looks like there are a couple of highlighted parcels here. Let's scroll up. This might be an opportunity because we know that there's actually going to be some new development happening in this area. So we might want to explore more one of these parcels or this set of parcels. Since we do only have 5 parcels, I'm going to demonstrate one of our other functionalities of the tool, which is that group parcel reporting. So there's 2 ways to do that. You can either select Parcel Report here, and that's going to create a parcel report for all 5. You can use our group parcel selection tool. I'm just going to click that Parcel Report button in the interest of time. So it's going to take a little bit longer than the last parcel report because we are trying to do this for 5 individual parcels. What it's going to do is provide an overview page that identifies how many parcels you have selected, what the total acreage is for each of those, and then go into each individual parcel. So this will allow you to actually zoom in and compare each of those parcels for the goals and interests that you have for your project. So this will just finish up in just a moment. When it does, we'll go over it. But there it is. So the only thing we'll need to show here is that this is sort of that overview map that highlights each one of those parcels and how many acres there are and their parcel identification numbers. And as I mentioned, each individual parcel. The other thing you can do from that list of 5 is export that as a table. So you have that either as an Excel spreadsheet or as CSV. I'm not going to do that here, but that's an option as well. And that's also an option if you have 200 or more parcels that you want to just be able to catalog that list. You can also, from this view, do the same thing that we did in that second decision-making scenario. Select a parcel and create a individual parcel report if you know that that's the one that you're really interested in. Okay. So those are 3 decision-making scenarios that I hope piqued your interest, demonstrated each or many of the functions of the tool. Don't stop there. After this webinar is finished, go ahead and explore on your own and figure out some new use cases for you. But that's all I wanted to say about that, about the tool for now, and hopefully we have some questions that we can answer after that. I'm going to finish with just talking very briefly as I bring up our contact information that we're trying to use this tool to bring more green infrastructure into the city as well. So led by our Urban Program Director, Darcy Schofield, we're trying to use the tool to identify urban community forestry opportunities that support the urban heat island mitigation, stormwater, vulnerable populations, creating new urban farms that provide access to healthy food, but also provide a really great stormwater mitigation opportunity and support vulnerable populations as well. And as demonstrated in our first decision-making scenario, working with the city on revitalizing Columbia Road and into a complete streets, multimodal, green, climate-resilient transportation corridor is another big part of our work in the city. So I guess we can open it up for questions now.
Yeah. And this is Jessica. We have aggregated your questions, and hopefully we'll be getting to as many of them as possible. I want to thank Chris again for walking us through this tool. I've seen a lot of enthusiasm from the comments on some of the questions we're getting, and the Trust for Public Land is a great partner. And although this tool is a little more technical, we hope it becomes a really great resource for you to learn more about and to integrate into your work, whether you're a community leader, whether you're in this work as a professional in architecture or an academic field. We really see this as an opportunity to push some creative thinking around what's possible in our city. So I just want to thank the Trust for Public Land again for this great resource. And the team now will be answering some of the questions we received throughout the webinar. Again, the link is also in the chat. If you do not want to create a YouTube channel, you can submit a question via that form as well.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. So I'm just going to bring the tool back up while we answer these questions, because I may be able to use the tool to answer some of them. So David asks, notice that he sees that the tree canopy extends beyond Boston proper and wants to know where the data is coming from. Good catch, David. So we are using an LCD in this case. That was for a variety of reasons, but what we can say is that we are using as a part of this project, we're working with the University of Vermont to create new, up-to-date tree canopy cover based on 2015 LiDAR information that gets really detailed for both Boston and the whole Metro Mayor's region, so these other 14 cities and towns around the city, that we'll be incorporating that into the tool sometime later this year. The data, I think, has just been transferred to us within the last week or so. So we're really excited for that. While NLCD data is great for what it does, we're really excited for the ability to get down to that really high resolution data that will help us so much more with decision making. Eliza asks, are these maps built in Tableau? No, we use the ArcGIS platform on Esri to do all of our analysis and build those maps. So we do provide all of the final results to the city for their use, and they may be able to convert them into Tableau, but we don't actually work at the Trust for Public Land in Tableau at this time. So Sarah asks, does the parcel report identify the specific parcel's property owner? The answer is yes, and I'm just going to pick something. Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to that 146 London Street that we went through in our first example, or our second example. So when you select that parcel, you can see that the owner name is Lombardo Properties. So you're able to create you are able to use this to understand who you need to contact and try to schedule those meetings for and make the case for green infrastructure in those areas. Christina asked, how up to date are all the layers you are using, particularly social vulnerability, and how is social vulnerability defined? Thank you, Christina. So we used for the City of Boston, I think I'll answer this in a couple different ways. So for all of our results, we have metadata associated with it. And that basically just describes all of our analysis, all of the information that we've collected for this tool. I'm just going to scroll down to our social vulnerability section. Let's see, just a little bit further here so we can see. We did use ACS data, and it was all based on EPA's EJ screen index. So if we look here, in this case in the City of Boston, in each city the definition is different because of the needs and focuses in the city that we're working in. But we used the ACS 5-year summary from EJ Screen 2008 to 2012. We know that this year they updated, in fact, or actually maybe about 7 or 8 months ago, they updated, EJ Screen updated their results using the most recent ACS. So we'll be updating that when we do our data update, probably sometime later this summer. For all of our data, we'll be updating that. And as far as social vulnerability is concerned, we like to keep that definition to what our partners want, what our partners' needs are within the cities that we're working in. And they were very, very much interested in using EPA's EJ screen as a standardized national index that has the research behind it. Okay, so one more. Let's see. Great question, David. So David asks, how can vacant lots be low income? Is income by parcel or by neighborhood? Another great point. So I'm just going to bring up our social vulnerability results again real quick so that will help me answer this question. It's by block group. So what we are saying when we identify a priority is, let's say, for example, people of color. So this block group, if it's identified as either a moderate to high priority, is a block group that has a higher percentage of people of color. It has or for low-income households, it has a higher percentage of low-income households than the average within the city. So we use a statistical break to create those, but basically that's what we're getting at. It's so when you ask, can a vacant parcel be low income, the parcel isn't low income, but it's within a neighborhood or a block group that is considered low income. Okay. Another question, what analytics are built in? So, for example, the ability to aggregate information about parcels that match criteria, stormwater, total stormwater mitigation. So, we include as much as we can. So, so what we don't do is sort of a scenario planning result, which I think is kind of what you're getting at there, David. We identify where the areas of need are. But what we don't do is identify what the potential is for green infrastructure mitigation. So we say that we need to figure out a way to mitigate stormwater on this site or in this area. But that requires further analysis and further work to sort of design what that project might be. But your question is very common across all of the cities that we're working in. We want to eventually, as our program grows, be able to provide sort of baseline service for identifying, what a scenario what the impact of a specific intervention might be. Yeah, so one other thing to note that I need to reiterate, and I want to make sure that people know, is all of those examples that I presented are hypothetical. They are, these are examples that we thought could be feasible based on, the work that we did with our technical advisory team. But these are not examples that are currently happening. We're just using these to try to identify potential, to spark people's thoughts about how they might be able to collaborate across agencies or with different departments or with other organizations. But these are just hypothetical examples. And then, okay, so Samantha asks, what year is assumed for the analysis results, and how will the priorities change in the future? So when we completed this tool, which was in the summer of 2016, we used the most up-to-date data that we had. So that was over the course of 2015 and 2016. When we update this tool, and we will update it annually, so we will update it sometime later this summer or early in the fall, we'll update all of the information with the most current data. So that's everything from parcels to all of the base information that we use for our analysis. There was another one. Okay. And how will the priorities change in the future? Well, so what we don't do is go through our entire advisory team process and reevaluate what the criteria are. We could do that sometime down the line, but over the course of the lifetime, the initial lifetime of this tool, which is 3 to 5 years, we'll have the same criteria across the same objectives, and we'll just update that data, and the priorities will change based on what the base information that we used for that criteria are. So the next question, have you explored mapping carbon emissions? Another great question. So we haven't done it specifically across the city at this point, but we have worked with ICF International to develop a methodology that allows us to identify what the change in vehicle miles traveled and therefore greenhouse gas emissions might be from the development of a new active transportation intervention. So, for example, the Columbia Road trail, or is it going to be called the trail, Darcy?
Multimodal.
Multimodal, yes.
Green, sustainable, climate resilient transportation corridor.
So we could run this analysis for that corridor to identify what the sort of change in greenhouse gas emissions might be once that trail is completed. So just one other note about trees. Greenovate and the City of Boston will follow up with the summary about that in the summary blog post that'll come out early next week. Okay, I think we have one more question. Scroll. So the last question that we had is, have you explored mapping methane emissions? And we haven't. I believe as a part of EPA's EJ screen, they do incorporate methane emissions because that project sort of came out of air quality related concerns. So the issue that we've had with methane is that we haven't gotten it at a scale that makes sense for making decisions within a city. Regionally, we've seen it at that scale, but within a city to really drill down into making decisions on interventions, we haven't seen data at a scale that works for our work. Okay, so we have a comment and question from Allison. This tool would really help with local communities being able to incorporate Connect, Cool, Absorb, and Protect into their zoning codes. Do you see this as a practical use for the tool? We absolutely do. It's not something that we've traditionally done in our work, but we really think that being able to think about the other types of policy interventions, and especially things like zoning codes, how we could advocate for and support those types of policy interventions within cities. Absolutely, great question. Awesome. I think that's all we have today. Thank you so much to everyone that joined us, and I'm going to sign off from here. Thank you all very much.